staggering 54 million Americans are impacted by osteoporosis and low bone density, and it happens sooner than you think. Find out why many experts now believe bone loss isn't a calcium deficiency, it's a whole body imbalance. So today we're helping you build back stronger bones.
From the Stream Center, welcome to Bloom Health Club, sponsored by Monticello Family and Sedation Dentistry.
Welcome to the Bloom Health Club, everyone. I'm your host, Gayle Guyardo, and I'm with bone health expert Debbie Robinson, who, like many experts, believe women have been misguided and disempowered when it comes to our bone health. Thank you so much for joining us, Debbie.
Thanks for having me.
And our director, Terrence Middlebrooks, is also here. He's going to be jumping in on the conversation because bone loss affects men and women alike, but he also has a wife that he loves very much.
Yeah.
So I know he's got questions coming up about her.
Absolutely, I sure do.
Okay, all right. So Debbie, let's start with your personal story, which led you to a hugely popular podcast that really centers around our bone health. And you believe that we've been set up for failure as women when it comes to bone health.
Well, we have, because we've been taken out of the equation. So my journey began when I was 50. My hip joint collapsed, and I had to have a total hip replacement at age 51. And so learning about my bones happened way before it normally does for most of us.
And you were an active 50-year-old woman. It wasn't like you were on the sidelines. What led to the accident itself?
Well, ironically, I don't know if we've ever spoken about this, but a yoga teacher pushed my body, adjusted my body, and tore my hip joint when I was 44.
You're kidding.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Yeah, a male teacher pushed me, tore my hip. So for 5 years, I lived like that, and then I couldn't walk anymore. So yes, I was active. I played tennis 5 days a week. I went spinning at the gym 4 days a week. I had 3 little kids. So I had a really active life. And when I couldn't walk anymore, I realized I had to go look at what was happening. And then I had an MRA. So when you look at a joint, it's an arthroscopic MRA. And I found out I had a torn labrum, and I had a surgery to try to repair it. And 4 months later, my hip joint totally collapsed.
Unbelievable. And then, the recovery, a new hip, and actually a new life. And I often believe that when things happen to us, we can really grow from it, and not just for our own personal growth, but to be able to help others along the way. And that's why you started a very popular podcast where you talk to leading experts when it comes to our bone health, including top surgeons. You find out about new technology. So talk to me about how the system is set up right now. I found out firsthand that you don't even get a script from your doctor to get a DEXA scan until you're 65. Had I waited to 65, I would have been in a world of trouble. It just was happen chance that I got a bone scan or a body scan, I should say, at Lifeguard Imaging, and they did the DEXA scan as part of it. And then I found out in my late 50s that I had osteopenia. And then I also, after being devastated, found out you can reverse bone loss. So talk to me about what you've learned through your podcast and what you hope the message is for people out there listening and watching.
Yeah, well, reversing bone loss is not something that was even used. We didn't say that. 2 years ago, I said to a person in the bone health space, I said, osteoporosis is reversible. And she said, no, it's not. You can't say that, she told me. And I'm like, really? Because it's happening. And because I see it in my own self, I see it in people I work with. So even the concept, Gayle, that we could reverse bone loss and reverse osteoporosis, depending on where you are in that range, that's a new concept. That's where we empower women. That's where we give hope to women. And that is why I do what I do.
That is incredible. So you say that it really starts as a whole body approach. So you've written a cookbook, you've launched a podcast. What is your vision for the future when it comes to women and bone health?
Wow, my vision for the future is that we start paying attention to this earlier, that doctors learn more so they no longer, let's say, bully or pressure, because those are the words, right? Bully and pressure. Threatening women that if they don't take the pills or the injections that they're recommending, that they might break their bone on their way out to their car or within a year. So when that is what I really want to stop there and have women be in control. I mean, that there are bones. We need to learn that, hey, there's things we could do.
Yeah, there are things that we can do. Now, what's scary to me is how big of a role big pharma plays in all of this. And I am not against medication. I understand that it saves life. But if you're not getting scanned until you're 65, and then you're be putting on these medications that have very serious side effects, I only know this because my own mother had to be taken off the drugs and then put on yet another drug to rebound from the side effects of, and so it was like a slippery slope, and she got nowhere, and she still broke her back, as did my grandmother. So how do we get out of this broken cycle of outdated technology and outdated medicine, quite frankly?
Yeah, even the fact that you have that to share, like that's part of why you do what you do, right? Because that's a horrible experience. So since the 1990s, the narrative has been controlled by big pharma and big healthcare. The doctors are trained to find the disease and give the pill for the disease. And this is a way that osteoporosis and osteopenia have been handled. That's not the way to do it, because, well, what that does is that's the only option then are the pills. Well, there's so many of us, Gayle, that want to do what we can do, right? And you don't want to, especially if you've seen what you've seen, you don't want to be that. You don't want to suffer in the way that you saw your mom or your grandma suffer, right? So you want to know that there is something that you can do. And so the way that it was done was the diagnosis. We diagnose, we treat, and we manage, and that's all pill related. And now women are getting more savvy, and they're realizing, hey, there's side effects from those pills. And a lot of those women are still fracturing, even that we're on those pills. I mean, our fractures have increased over the years. The rate of fractures, the number of fractures. So these medications that have been around since the 1990s, they're not working.
They're not working. You know, I've worked with Terrence now for 5 years on Bloom, and we've really grown the show together over many, many, many years. And Terrence, I think it's fair to say that the Gayle Guyardo that started the show 5 years ago, physically, mentally, from talking to experts like Debbie and taking this knowledge we learn. And one of the big things that you and I have in common is we're both into weightlifting, we're both into physical fitness. But don't you believe that more women need to jump on the bandwagon when it comes to lifting weights?
Absolutely. Well, I got to be careful how I answer that question, Gayle. That was a good setup.
Sorry.
However, but I do have some friends that, female friends who did all kind of weight loss journeys, went to different classes such as the boot camps and all these other jazzercise, all that. I might be telling my age by that term. But
as long as you don't say step aerobics, you're in the clear.
But really saw a true transformation when they started weightlifting. And to this day, like my wife will be 50. I hope I'm not, put it out there of her age or whatever. So she'll be 50 this year. And so that was the one thing. And she's went through a kind of a weight loss journey. She looks great. However, I told her, I said, with you losing all that weight, you need to start building muscles. Where do you think she should start if that's the case? If you are at this age in life, should you just hit the weight room hard, or how do you slowly approach that type of training?
Well, I think it's great that you said slowly approach, because when we are emphasizing stronger muscles for stronger bones, because there is such a strong relationship. Actually, bone loss is called osteopenia that turns into osteoporosis. Muscle loss is called sarcopenia, and that also happens in the 30, 40-year range. Osteosarcopenia, a new term, is the relationship between as the muscles are losing their strength, so are the bones. So it is such an intricate relationship. And it does matter how you start, because when we say lift heavy weights, well, I work with women that did think they needed to lift, went in, weren't prepared, didn't have a trainer, going too quick, and getting injured.
Yes.
And so you do have to either work with somebody. I say work with somebody that knows what they're doing. Now that's going to cost you, right? So if you have the money to go to personal trainers, great. And if you don't, yoga is an amazing place to start, because it's your body weight. You're going to load into joints. You're going to move, like when you do leg positions that are out to the sides and you have your femur bone, the upper leg bone out to the side, and now you're weight bearing on that, that is going to develop stronger muscles in the lower extremities. And studies show that the lower extremities, so the glutes, the hamstrings, and the quads, that is what we need for healthy aging, is a strong lower body.
And how does balance play into all of this? Because, I hear statistics about women falling and the recovery, especially as we age, it's actually pretty grim.
Yeah, and bones, that's how they break, is from falls. So focusing on balance is really critical. And some of them, you could do things all day, every day. So that's what I say. Don't just show up to the gym for an hour. So back to what Terrence asked about getting started with muscles, also get started with limber joints, with flexible feet, with ankles that bend. If you think about beef jerky, right? And if you bend beef jerky, it frays. If you take a juicy steak and you bend a juicy steak, it's moist and it gives to that. We want our muscles to be bendable and not breakable. We need our joints to have that range of motion in them. So standing on one leg throughout the day, bending your toes, coming up onto the balls of your feet, that is going to be part of balance. And then you could do balancing postures, tree pose and some of the single leg balancing postures that's in the practice of yoga.
Tell us about your podcast. I know you bring in a lot of great guests, and you've learned so much and shared so much with your listeners.
You just made a comment about Gayle 5 years ago. Well, Debbie is Debbie because of my guests. So I, at this point, mostly interview functional MDs. I work with a lot of orthopedic surgeons who are truly the bone doctors, the people who touch bones, put screws in them, saw them, and do all that stuff, right? So it is all my guests that I've had on, the functional medicine physicians that promote BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement, realize the relationship between gut health and bone health, or gut health and all over body health. And it is my experts that actually have fueled me, given me this information, this platform to share the information that I learned from them with my viewers or my listeners, so that I can empower women to realize that we are actually in control of our own body and our own bones.
Now, Debbie, question I have, because I represent the male population here. Can men suffer from osteoporosis?
They can, and they do.
Really?
Now, most of them are women, so 80%.
Right.
So part of that is that you guys have bigger bones, and typically men don't lose testosterone until age 70, and women lose estrogen in menopause around age 50. So the bone health protective hormones of estrogen and testosterone, we have a different time frame for that. However, in this modern culture with stress and everything that's going on, there's a lot of testosterone levels that are dropping in males. So we don't test for it, Terrence, but it's actually something we should do, because potentially there could be more men that have osteopenia and or osteoporosis than we realize.
What are some of the symptoms that I myself could probably look out for?
So we call it a silent disease because usually it's a fracture, or what I'm noticing lately is women are falling and fracturing. The number one fractured site on women over age 65 is the wrist. So women are falling and fracturing their bones, and the orthopedic surgeon may notice that, hey, this looks, something's going on here. Why don't you go get a DEXA scan? And so the things you could look for: hair loss, thin, fragile nails. And I don't know if that's something men notice. And then
Hair loss, yes.
Well, okay, but not male pattern baldness. I just, mean like hair in general. The other things would be brain fog and fatigue, because that could be an indicator that you have gut issues and that you have digestion and absorption issues. And if you have that, then you're not going to be feeding your bones.
Yeah, I was going to say, Debbie, everything that you described could be symptoms of other underlying health conditions that we're dealing with, which is why I like what you're getting, the messaging that you're getting out to your listeners and viewers. And it's about, we need to look at this as a whole body approach, because it's too much we're trying to put a Band-Aid on a problem instead of trying to fix it holistically. Let's talk about how the gut plays a direct role and work into that a little bit about stress and all the inflammation in our bodies and how that's leading to bone breakdown.
There are 7 main root causes of bone loss: inflammation, stress, mineral imbalance, hormone imbalance, acidity, toxicity, and a sedentary lifestyle. All of them are linked back to the gut. We have to make sure that our food from mouth to bones gets there, that we are digesting. So back to Terrence's question about some of the things we would notice. Well, digestion. Are you pooping every day? And are you pooping in the morning unassisted without caffeine? So a daily bowel movement is an indication of a really healthy gut and healthy digestive system. So making sure that we digest and absorb our nutrients is really critical. And the big thing is the biggest trigger of inflammation. We know that 80% of our immune system is in our gut. That's where inflammation is triggered. And osteoporosis is an inflammatory disease.
Debbie, we like to take some viewer questions, people that, have reached out to us via social media. The first one comes from Jennifer, and Jennifer wants to know, how do bones change as we age, and when should I start worrying about bone loss?
So it's our 30s, like maybe mid 30s is when the building up of bones slows down in relationship to the breakdown of bones. So believe it or not, bone loss begins in our 30s. Should you worry about it? I'm going to say raise awareness. Heal your gut, manage your stress, move appropriately, and do what you can, because those things will actually stop or slow down bone loss.
All right, the next one is an interesting one. Joseph wants to know, do supplements like collagen or magnesium help with bone strength?
So collagen is a protein, and the bone matrix is 40 to 50%. The collagen matrix, where the minerals are laid down in the bone to make that quality that we need to be fracture resistant. So I personally don't take collagen. I do creatine as a supplement. I do know many people do take collagen. I think there are some studies that are showing that collagen is beneficial. Magnesium, probably the most important mineral that most of us are missing, is magnesium. And so I say yes to magnesium supplements.
Now, can I jump in real quick before you get to the next comment, Gayle? You said when you take creatine, do you recommend that before for folks to just dive in and start going over to their nutritionist shop and picking up a thing of creatine, that they go get their blood work done and test the levels of their creatine? Do you recommend that, or what? How should people go ahead and get started in this?
So I don't even know about testing for creatine. I take one of our friends. I take her product.
I do too.
Yes, our friend has a product that I take. I don't know if we can actually test levels of creatine in blood. That's an interesting question. There are ways to test different deficiencies, different functional labs. That's a good question. That's, of course, something I'll go and research.
Yeah, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I do take a lot of supplementation. Now it's more directed because of, blood tests and things like that. And then other things I layer on, like creatine or sheatine. And then I also take the magnesium. But there was one point I was just shooting in the wind. Like I was just taking every vitamin and probably had the most expensive pee in Tampa Bay. And, it wasn't getting me anywhere in life. To Terrence's point, getting some blood tests, finding out what you're deficient in can help. I didn't do that for the creatine, but I will tell you, I've noticed a significant change in my strength level since I started taking it. I didn't see the weight gain, which I know this particular formula that you and I are talking about is designed specifically for women so that you don't bloat up. Staying hydrated really, really helps. And the other thing that I noticed great changes with that I started doing after I did the DEXA scan and found out that I had osteopenia is I jumped on the hormone replacement therapy, not the pellets. I do like a lozenge of progesterone under my tongue. I do a patch of estrogen, estradiol or whatever it's called. And then I inject myself with like a trace amount, which you could do it with a cream, but of testosterone. And man, you looked at my scans, year to year, things got so much better.
Yeah, I do all that too.
You do?
All the hormones.
Yeah.
I'm so pro hormones, like bring them on.
Yeah, because, there was that flawed studies back, 26 years ago where women were taken off. And I remember my mom coming to me, whatever you do not get on hormone replacement therapy. It'll lead to breast cancer. I mean, this fear mongering. And then meanwhile, come to find out that study was hugely flawed and women's bones are literally deteriorating and their hearts and everything about them, their health in general went down the tank.
Yeah, one of the gynecologists I interviewed said that the Women's Health Initiative is what we're speaking about. When it came out that all the doctors took everybody off the hormones and women started fracturing.
Yeah, it's so sad. All right, we got another viewer question. Rita She contacted us and wants to know, do certain medical conditions increase the risk of bone loss? That's a good one.
That's a good one. There's quite a few, especially anything that affects digestion. So when women have GERD or irritable bowel and they're on certain medications, like GERD in particular, protein pump inhibitors, PPIs, that's going to be negative for bone health. Glucocorticoids, which are some steroids, that's going to be negative for bone health. Celiac disease. So if there's any of these disease states where you're taking certain medications, we know that those are actually not good. They're going to get in the way of the bone remodeling process. So knowing what medications you're on, and then from there doing the best that you could do to manage stress, to eat well, to sleep well, to hydrate, and to move your body every day.
I want to just take a quick second to thank Monticello Family and Sedation Dentistry for believing in all of us here on the Bloom Health Club, bringing this streaming show to life so that we can have guests like Debbie come in and spread information that, quite frankly, I don't think enough people know about. I mean, this is not information that's readily available. Debbie is talking to experts, surgeons in the industry, and taking what she learns and sharing it with you, very much like we do here on Bloom. Tell us about your podcast. What's it called? How do we find you?
So my podcast is Stronger Bones Lifestyle. It's on all the platforms. And that's it.
And what about your cookbook?
My cookbook, Bone Appetit,
I like that.
BONE Appetit, the Stronger Bones Collection. I went to cooking school, so I'm a chef, functional health coach, and a yoga therapist. And I created the recipes to support not just the bones, but the gut, to make sure we digest, we absorb, and we assimilate the bone-building nutrients.
Terrence, did you grab one of those cookies that Debbie made for us, that tahini peanut butter situation that had all this protein and calcium in it?
I did not, and I hope our interns didn't swallow them up.
Oh,
so
I'm
hopefully
seeing a
they
lot of
saved me
thumbs up.
one. Yeah. So
Those were good. I mean, you think, I'm going to eat for bone health, it's going to be boring. Debbie, those cookies were out of this
yes.
world.
You ate two of them in the one segment.
Okay, I
that we
ate
had.
3 when I went downstairs to look for my iPad. So I'm fessing up about the tahini peanut butter cookies. They were
They
so
looked
delicious.
amazing. Yes.
I know, Debbie, that you flew in to be on our globally syndicated health and wellness show, Bloom, and you stuck around for the Bloom Health Club. We appreciate you taking your time, your expense, and your passion to help educate our viewers and listeners. We cannot thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this platform and opportunity to share this information.
And Terrence, thank you for pitch hitting for
Stepping
us
in.
today. Yeah, you're awesome. We love having you. And for all of you, you can watch our streaming show, Bloom Health Club, on Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, Samsung TV, WFLA.com, and YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I will see you on the next Bloom Health Club.